Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nashta Praesha Bhadrashu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. This morning we are reading from the 27th chapter of the third canto entitled Understanding Material Nature, texts 28 and 29. Actually, even the previous text 27 is included in the sequence of 3 verses according to our acharyas and commentators, but Srila Prabhupada decided to separate the previous verse and gave a very insightful, very deep purport on the verse that was read yesterday by Srila Mukunda Maharaj. And these 2 verses today come together, so we'll chant them responsively. Mad bhaktah pratibudharto Mad bhaktah pratibudharto Mat prasadena bhuyasa Mat prasadena bhuyasa Nishreyasam svasamsthanam Nishreyasam svasamsthanam Kaivalyakyam madashrayam Kaivalyakyam madashrayam Prapnoti hanjasadhirah Prapnoti hanjasadhira Svadrisha chinna samshayaha Svadrisha chinna samshayaha Yadgatvana nivarteta Yadgatvana nivarteta Yogi lingad vinirgame Yogini lingad nivirgame Mad bhaktah pratibudharto Mat prasadena bhuyasa Nishreyasam svasamsthanam Kaivalyakyam madashrayam Prapnoti tanjasadhira Svadhisha chinna samshayaha Yadgatvana nivarteta Yogi lingad vinirgame. Word for word translation. Mad bhaktaha, my devotee. Pratibudhartha, self-realized. Mat prasadena, by my causeless mercy. Bhuyasa, unlimited. Nishreyasam, the ultimate perfectional goal. Svasamsthanam, his abode. Kaivalya akyam, called Kaivalya. Madashrayam, under my protection. Prapnoti, attains. Iha, in this life. Anjasa, truly. Dhira, steady. Svadrisha, by knowledge of the self. Chinna samshayaha, freed from doubts. Yet to that abode. Gatva, having gone. Na, never. Nivarteta, comes back. Yogi, the mystic devotee. Lingat, from the subtle and gross material bodies. Vinirgame, after departing. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: My devotee actually becomes self-realized by my unlimited causeless mercy, and thus, when freed from all doubts, he steadily progresses towards his destined abode, which is directly under the protection of my spiritual energy of unadulterated bliss. This is the ultimate perfectional goal of the living entity. After giving up the present material body, the mystic devotee goes to that transcendental abode and never comes back. Purport. Actually, the purport by Srila Prabhupada on this verse, of course, as we know, Prabhupada very faithfully relayed to us commentaries of the previous acharyas, and also him being no less of an acharya adds his own depth and mercy to the commentaries. The depth of his realizations, sometimes Srila Prabhupada writes in the commentaries something that cannot be gleaned from the commentaries of other acharyas. And it's so profound that it opens a new domain, a new realm of spiritual understanding. And the mercy that comes with that addition, you could say, extra dimension that Prabhupada provides in his purports with his own words. The mercy is that we find ourselves comfortably situated in that realm that Srila Prabhupada opens for us. Somehow he is not just distantly or theoretically describes transcendental reality or spiritual knowledge, but he's very inviting. He invites us into that realm. A disciple of Srila Prabhupada once gave a class. I think it was Rinda Sarva Prabhu. I may be wrong, but one of his disciples one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples in Mayapur. And he said that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Srila Prabhupada, they speak in single in one voice, but in different fashions. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur oftentimes speaks as if from far above the realm of material world, somewhere up like on Mount Warning, right there on the peak. From there, and he tells us, okay, come up here. It's a steep path. The path is difficult, you're weak, and there are many difficulties and obstacles on the way. But you'll get here. You'll make it if you continue and make efforts towards that goal. But Srila Prabhupada, devotee, explains, he walks up to us and he puts his hand around our shoulders and says, okay, let's go together. I'll show you the way. I'll show you how to get to there. So the commentary that Prabhupada wrote for this verse, the more I read over and over again this commentary, trying to understand what to discuss, the task was becoming more and more difficult, because every single word and expression that Prabhupada uses here is so pregnant with meaning, and also it creates the kind of echo chamber that the meanings and the instructions, the highlights that Prabhupada puts in his commentary start reverberating and interacting with other points that you have heard somewhere else or read in his books or heard in his classes or in the classes of his devotees. I have been listening just to keep myself abreast of what's going on in the Srimad Bhagavatam classes. I've been listening to online streams of Bhagavatam classes for the last few days. I listened to the class by Krishna Rupa Devi, blessed by it, and I really like the point that you mentioned in your class, of all wonderful points, that Srila Prabhupada's books, they give us faith. It's not that they intellectually convince us or just by attrition, by repetition over and over again, Prabhupada ingrains into our minds something that he wants to come across. That it works differently. It works as if Prabhupada just brings out from within our hearts what is already there. That's why it's so natural. You could compare it to a potent medicine, or I know for many vegetarians, B12 levels are very important to monitor, right? So when someone experiences B12 deficiency, then he or she starts feeling weak and fatigued and easily succumbing to different ailments. But as soon as one gets the dosage of vitamin B12, either through injection or a spray or something like that, immediately as if that new life comes back to the body. That's the effect of that vital medicine, or oxygen for that matter. If we feel suffocating, as soon as someone opens the window, then that gust of fresh air brings us to life and to consciousness. This is how Prabhupada works through his books. That's how he acts upon us. And there is nothing that can replace it. Just like we cannot replace oxygen with anything, we cannot replace vitamin B12 or other essential nutrients, we cannot replace Prabhupada's books with anything else. I would even dare say that even with the acharyas, not because acharyas are deficient in any way, but because they don't want to deal with upstarts who, bypassing Srila Prabhupada, go straight to them. That's why Prabhupada, on the one hand, emphasized how important books of the acharyas are, but on the other hand, on many occasions in his conversations and his exchanges of letters with disciples and his lectures, he emphasized how somehow or other acharyas speak through him in a way that is easily accessible for us and compatible with our situation. It's a parampara. And parampara doesn't tolerate what Srila Prabhupada explained in his purports, also in the third canto, Gurora Vagya, or Maryada Vyatikram, which means that someone in his or her maybe inspiration tries to surpass the previous acharyas, going straight to what they think to be the source of the ultimate knowledge, the full, complete picture of transcendental reality. It doesn't work like that, because transcendental reality is personal, and the acharyas who bring that transcendental reality to us they're also persons, and they decide, it's their jurisdiction to give us access to spiritual knowledge. It's not information. That information, we can read books upon books of knowledge, and we have seen devotees in our movement who memorized. I personally know devotees who memorized not just Bhagavatam, but also commentaries of the acharyas in Sanskrit on the Bhagavatam, almost all verses. They could quote verbatim from their memory any page, any shloka, any acharya. But they're not longer with us because they decided that they know better than Srila Prabhupada. They had access to superior knowledge, and that didn't sit well with the acharyas and the Shastra. That's why Prabhupada emphasized how important it is to understand and gain access to spiritual knowledge through proper channels. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena savaya upadekshantita gyanam gyanina statva darshinaha. This verse in the Bhagavad Gita that Prabhupada oftentimes quoted explains that just by properly questioning, by serving, and by being humble, these three processes by themselves give us spiritual knowledge. Even if the acharyas in response to the spiritual master in response doesn't decide to give us any particular information, just by those actions alone, like again, Krishna Rupa Devi in her class. Again, I remember I was listening to your class a few months ago. You gave that story and then you repeated that story again, that Prabhupada cupped his hand and said, the pure devotee can see in a drop of water Krishna and Krishna's friends and Krishna's cows. Everything is in one drop of water for a pure devotee, and he can give that knowledge to us. So that's why when we read Prabhupada's purports, they're not just informational, they're transformational. They transform us into who? Into those who Prabhupada wants us to be. I guess perfection of spiritual life, if it could be summarized in some way, and there are different ways to summarize it. Prabhupada oftentimes also expressed his desire for his devotees to love Krishna. When he was asked, what pleases you the most? Prabhupada said, if you love Krishna. But I guess if we are asked to formulate what would be the success of our spiritual life, one of probably the best ways to express it is to become those who Prabhupada wants us to be, or who Krishna wants us to be through Srila Prabhupada. And he helps us by giving these commentaries and expecting us to read them over and over again, so we could become as steeped in the message of the acharyas, and as steeped as in Krishna's mercy as he himself was. And he wouldn't settle for anything less than that. Prabhupada expected a very high standard of devotion from his disciples, and he wouldn't take any excuses for them falling short of those expectations, like that. So Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport, that's why it's a very difficult task, because you try to, every single And every single sentence in this verse begs to be expanded. I remember Niranjana Maharaj once described his encounter, his meeting with Gaur Govinda Maharaj. It was somewhere in America, I think it was in Hartford, 1994, 1993, thereabout. And Gaur Govinda Maharaj, somehow he was stranded in a hotel room, and he had a lot of time, and he had no one to look after him. So Niranjana Maharaj found out about it, and he went to take his association. And they started reading Prabhupada's books, and Gaur Govinda Maharaj, as Niranjana Maharaj remembered, he just picked up a Prabhupada's book, opened it almost like randomly at some random page, and he started reading Prabhupada's purports, and he started telling Maharaj, Niranjana Swami, "Look, Maharaj," and he was very excited, very animated, and very ecstatic. It's like, "Look, see this commentary, see this verse. No, this is what Prabhupada means." And he started opening up the words of Prabhupada, referring to the acharyas Prabhupada was quoting, sometimes paraphrasing or just conveying to us. And all of a sudden, that immense depth of Prabhupada's purpose, as Niranjana Maharaj remembered, opened up in front of him. And that could be done with every single page of Prabhupada's books, to the point that Prabhupada, in the very beginning of his translation of Srimad Bhagavatam in the first canto, he writes, in the 3rd chapter of first canto, when he had just completed 3 chapters, he said that if someone reads Srimad Bhagavatam, he can meet Krishna face to face in these pages. And he repeats that statement, very bold statement, over and over again. Just read the books and you'll meet Krishna face to face on the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. So with this short preface, you can read Prabhupada's purport to this verse. Srila Prabhupada explains, actual self-realization means becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada continues explaining this topic from the previous verse, in which he gave a very, you could say, very narrow, very exacting definition of a pure devotee. He basically dismissed all other motives in devotional service, even those that appear to be pure. He says, even trying to understand one's pure spiritual nature, trying to understand one's relationship with the Lord, and trying to understand the nature of the Lord in the spiritual world, all those motives do not qualify as pure. And the only thing left, and what's left? The only thing left, he says, is the desire to serve Krishna out of spontaneous love for him, forsaking even the knowledge of his being God. And he quoted the examples of Vrajavasis. And Krishna himself in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam says, well, some people may or may not know who I am, how I am, and where I am. He says, Gyatva tayo vaimam, yaman yashchashmi yadrishaha. And he says, Yadman yashchasmi yadrishaha means people may or may not know where I am, how I am, and who I am. But if they serve me purely, they're the best of all. They're the dearest devotees to me. And I don't care whether they know that I am God or not. Of course, we do have to know that Krishna is God, and Prabhupada doesn't allow us to bypass that stage. But Prabhupada starts his commentary by emphasizing again, actual spiritualization means becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. Of course, Srila Prabhupada also gave his own very generous definition of a pure devotee. Who is a pure devotee? That is also a very kind of nebulous term. Sometimes devotees read so much into it, and we have even seen wars, holy wars in ISKCON over that definition. Who is a pure devotee? Or sometimes pure devotees, plural, and this or that. But Prabhupada is very practical, again, very generous and very merciful in that definition. He says elsewhere, whoever serves a pure devotee, whoever places pure devotee's instructions in his or her heart and builds his life around those instructions is pure enough to be pleasing to Krishna, pleasing to the spiritual master. So Prabhupada says, the existence of a devotee implies the function of devotion and the object of devotion. So these three are inseparable: devotee, the function of devotion, and object of devotion. Just like Vrindavan and Krishna, the particular form of Krishna he manifests in Vrindavan and Vrajavasis, they constitute three inseparable parts, and one of them doesn't exist without the others. So much so that when Krishna attempts to leave Vrindavan, being taken by Akrura, that love of Vrajavasis doesn't allow him to leave, and he stays. even though apparently, ostensibly, he lives, but in a different form, in a form which is suitable for his other devotees in Mathura. And Gopi Paranadana Prabhu, I remember, he explained that Krishna, that's why he always appears to travel between these three realms, Mathura, Dwaraka, and Vrindavan, subjecting his devotees to meeting with him and separation from him. But those specific forms of Krishna, Mathura, Vrindavan, and Dwaraka, they are eternally present in those realms and can be separated. The same here, Prabhupada says, existence of a devotee implies a function of devotion and object of devotion, Krishna. He also says that all three, devotee, bhakta, devotional service of bhakti, and Bhagavan, the one who is worshipped by devotee through devotion, all three of them are completely free. And he reminds us in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that if they're so free, the freedom is so unlimited, that even if we do not do anything to gain access to them, somehow they appear by their causeless mercy, out of their sheer free will. And he also says, and also that means that even if we make efforts for millions of lifetimes, we may not find them. So it works both ways. And he reminds us how precious that fortune is, that we have Krishna as the object of worship, and I have faith in him, in Krishna. And we have devotees who maintain and nurture that faith by their association. Self-realization ultimately means to understand the personality of Godhead and the living entities, to know the individual self and the reciprocal exchanges of loving service between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity is real self-realization. This cannot be attained by the impersonalists or other transcendentalists. They cannot understand the science of devotional service. And Srila Prabhupada explains elsewhere, paraphrasing Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says that the difference between devotees and everyone else, basically, transcendentalists, impersonalists, Atmaramas, you name it, is that it's only devotees who are distinguished by their faith in what? Not in Krishna. Even they have faith in Krishna. They have their own expectations of Krishna, of course, but they do have faith in Krishna. Sometimes faith in Krishna of those people of different other schools or lines of thought may appear to be stronger than that of devotees. But what distinguishes devotees from other people, and Krishna explains that in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, is that devotees have faith not in Krishna but in devotional service to Krishna and in his mercy. Devotees feel that they need Krishna's mercy, and they work or act in such a way to invite that mercy to descend upon them. That's why humility is so important. Again, humility is an inseparable part of bhakti, because that's the only singular quality of a devotee that you could say guarantees or ensures the maximum amount of mercy the devotee can get. To the point that even if a devotee has pure love of Krishna, prema, even if a devotee has pure devotional service, he or she feels they don't have it. Genuinely. It's not a pretense on them, on their part. It's not a nice figure of speech, a nice expression of thought. Sometimes social conventions force us to behave in a certain way. We have to fold our hands, bow down, and or at least bend our neck, and very humbly, meekly say, I'm your servant. It's nice. It's good culture. It's good culture, but those devotees, the great devotees, have everything. They have a special quality of dainya, which means, as Sanatana Goswami explains, dainya means a devotee has everything, but he or she feel they have nothing. Especially they feel themselves deficient in three ways. They feel they don't have enough love for Krishna. They feel they don't have enough service to Krishna, because love comes as a result of service. And the reason why they don't have enough service to Krishna, they feel, because we haven't got enough mercy of Krishna. And that's why they become hunters for mercy, always looking for where I could get it. And their behavior, their way of speech, their way of thinking, everything is there to, how would I say that, encourage or facilitate the expression of genuine and spontaneous mercy and compassion from the hearts of other devotees. They believe that it's only through devotees that they can get mercy of Krishna. Krishna himself is described in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam by a very nice, interesting name. Krishna has an unlimited number of names, and each and every name of Krishna highlights his specific quality. And that name that demigods in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam used to refer to Krishna. It's a very interesting name. They call him Sad Anugraha. Anugraha means mercy, and Sad means of devotees. And they call him Krishna, you are the mercy of devotees. How would we like that? And Jiva Goswami explains that Sad Anugraha means that Krishna gives his mercy only through devotees. He doesn't give it directly. Even if someone tries to approach him for his mercy, he always routes that person in such a way that he, on his or her way, gets that mercy from his devotees. He likes it. He puts his mercy into devotees' hands and make them authorized distributors so that they could give it to whoever they want, regardless of whether that person is qualified or not. Krishna puts a qualification. You do this, sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. If you're not devoted to me, if you are not controlling your senses, if you're envious of me, if you are not worshiping me, I forbid to give you knowledge about me. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita in the 18th chapter. But devotees are not bound by such conditions and such restrictions. They can give it to whoever they want. So Jiva Goswami explains, number one, Krishna gives his mercy only through devotees. Number two, he says Krishna gives his mercy only in the form of devotees. It's not that devotees give anything else, any other way or shape of Krishna's mercy except themselves. Jiva Goswami says that Krishna gives his mercy through devotees in the shape, in the form of devotees. They are Krishna's mercy. And then the third way to explain that the term Sadanugraha, Jiva Goswami says, Krishna gives his mercy only to devotees and to no one else. That means that they have to become devotees of his devotees to get it. So, Srila Prabhupada explains here, I have to continue, sorry, I should control myself, we should just continue reading the commentary by Srila Prabhupada, but I wanted to remember his words that devotees have faith in Krishna's mercy. That's what distinguishes them from everything else, everyone else. Devotional service is revealed to the pure devotee by the unlimited causeless mercy of the Lord. This is especially spoken here by the Lord, Mat prasadena, by my special grace. Prasad literally means mercy, my prasadena in instrumental case, my prasadena in Krishna qualifies, Lord Kapiladeva qualifies that word Mat prasadena, but by another adjective, bhuyasa, unlimited. This mercy of Krishna is very elusive. Sometimes devotees who actually experience mercy feel like, they look like victims of their karma, or victims of circumstances. I remember when Srila Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he passed away in that unfortunate car accident, and then it happened right after he left Mayapur, was what, 2002, 2003, 2002. And then devotees assembled in the temple hall in Sri Mayapur Dham, remembering for hours and hours Srila Tamal Krishna Maharaj and his wonderful service to Srila Prabhupada. And I became curious, I started looking up letters written by Srila Prabhupada to Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And I came across a letter written by Prabhupada to Tamal Krishna, that time just Das, Tamal Krishna Das, in 1968 or 69, thereabout. And Prabhupada writes to him, happy and satisfied with his service, he tells him in the letter, I'm so happy with your service, and I wish that you live for 100 years. How long did Tamal Krishna Maharaj live for? 54, 55. I wish that you live for 100 years, continuing to serve Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But then Prabhupada didn't stop at that. And then he said, but. Very meaningful. He said, but. As soon as Krishna recognizes someone for his devotee, or for his service, as soon as Krishna recognizes his devotee for his service, he tells him, okay, come to me. Come to me immediately. And that's what happened. So Prabhupada explains that what may appear to be an unfortunate accident, and devotees pass away from disease or from car accidents, from fire, as was the case with Indra Prabhu, who just celebrated recently. What was his appearance day? Recently was a celebration of Kirtan. But Krishna, as Prabhupada explains, Krishna just interferes. He interferes with the devotee's life, and he shows his mercy, special mercy to the devotee in such a way that only he or she understand that this is mercy. The mercy is, as Srila Prabhupada explains in his Krishna book, that mercy is Brahma, spiritual, unlimited, anantakam, that chin matram, very pure and exquisite. And he also says it's very sukshma, so subtle that sometimes everyone else feel pity on that devotee, but the devotee is in ecstasy and doesn't tell anyone. Like that. So Krishna's mercy is a very, how do I say that? I don't want to say, use the word dangerous, special mercy. Because sometimes Krishna, to give his devotees special mercy, first he clears the ground. As he explains himself, first I take away from the devotee whatever prevents him or her from accepting my mercy, be it his or her reputation, or wealth, or influence upon others, or renunciation, or knowledge. So many things can be taken away from us that we, sometimes I should speak about myself, I sometimes think to be the actual manifestation of Krishna's mercy. Krishna says, no, just take it away first. And then the next stage, that's not the mercy that he takes it away. That's a prelude to the mercy. And then when he strips devotee of those unhelpful attachments and upadhis, then he encourages the devotee to very humbly come, almost like crawling on the ground, to his devotees and take shelter in their association, their company. We can see those devotees who have matured enough to that level of being favorable for Krishna's mercy, they become very receptive to devotees, to their guidance, to their corrections. Was it Vaisheshika Prabhu who even printed a t-shirt with the slogan, I live to be corrected? Like that. And they treasure and cherish the association of devotees. They don't want to trade it for anything in the world. And then Krishna says, when such a devotee comes to my devotees, take shelter in their association. Madashraya means shelter in me, but Krishna uses the words very carefully and very skillfully. Madashraya means shelter of mine, those who are mine. He comes to take shelter of those who are mine. Then I give him my special mercy. Brahma, Chidmatra, Anantaka, and Sukshma, all that qualities of mercy described by Krishna in that verse of 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's what distinguishes devotees from the rest of transcendentalists. They are striving for Krishna's mercy, and they're very receptive to where it comes from, and they don't want to let it go or let it pass them. This is especially spoken of here by the Lord, Mat Prasadena, by my special grace. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Only those who engage in devotional service with love and faith receive the necessary intelligence from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so that gradually and progressively they can advance to the abode of the Personality of Godhead. And of course, Prabhupada is paraphrasing here. He doesn't give reference, but we can recognize the verse when Krishna says, Ish ivam, aham, what's it? Tesham ivanukam partham, aham agyana jam tamaha, basayat atma, Jnana dipena basvata, that to those who are dedicated to my service, I enlighten with lamp of knowledge from their hearts, dissipating the darkness of ignorance. Once Niranjana Maharaj really likes this episode from Prabhupada's preaching. In one class, Prabhupada asked for questions, and one devotee started narrating an encounter he had with impersonalists. And he told Prabhupada, thinking that Prabhupada would just play along and help him dismantle the arguments of those Mayavadis who told that devotee, oh, we don't need a spiritual master. We speak with Krishna directly. Why should I go to a spiritual master? Krishna is in everyone's heart, so I can speak with him directly. Right? And Prabhupada, and the devotee in his naivet, he narrated that episode to Prabhupada, expecting him to help combat or counteract those arguments. But Prabhupada came down heavy on the devotee instead. He said, and you didn't tell him anything? You didn't tell him who Krishna speaks with? Do you read our books? You don't read our books. That's why he's a rascal and you're also a rascal. And he went on like for 5 or 10 minutes, there is a recording, chastising the devotee for not standing up to those rascal Mayavadis and in this way becoming complicit with them. And the devotee, Niranjana Maharaj remembers that the devotee, there was someone who actually was present during that meeting, the devotee almost crawled out of that meeting with Prabhupada, pale as a ghost, because Prabhupada gave him so much chastisement, so heavy, because he told him. That's mercy also. Mercy doesn't always come in a kind of palatable and tasty way. Sometimes it comes as a bitter medicine. Sanatana Goswami asked Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to serve him that bitter medicine of his mercy. He thought, oh, you chastise Jagadananda Pandit, but you're always very respectful to me and always glorifying me. Why is he so fortunate and I'm so unfortunate? Would I also get some of that nectar? Anyway, let's continue reading the purpose, because I have 2 more paragraphs, and I'm afraid if we... Anyway, we have to finish them. Nishreyasa means the ultimate destination. Svasamsthana indicates that the impersonalists have no particular place to stay. The impersonalists sacrifice their individuality so that the living spark can merge into the impersonal effulgence emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord. But the devotee has a specific abode. The planets rest in the sunshine, but the sunshine itself has no particular resting place. When one reaches a particular planet, then he has a resting place. The spiritual sky, which is known as Kaivalya, is simply blissful light on all sides, and it is under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 14.27, Brahmana hi pratishtha aham. The impersonal Brahman effulgence rests on the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Kaivalyam, or impersonal Brahman. In that impersonal effulgence there are spiritual planets which are known as Vaikunthas, chief of which is Krishna Loka. Some devotees are elevated to the Vaikuntha planets and some are elevated to the planet Krishna Loka. According to the desire of the particular devotee, he is offered a particular abode which is known as Sva-samsthana, his desired destination. By the grace of the Lord, the self-realized devotee engaged in devotional service understands his destination even while in the material body. He therefore performs his devotional activities steadily, without doubting, and after quitting his material body, he at once reaches the destination for which he has prepared himself. After reaching that abode, he never comes back to the material world. And there was an incident once. Prabhupada, it was Revatinandana Prabhu, Prabhupada's disciple in England. Once a servant of Prabhupada, I think it was Nanda Kumar Prabhu, he came running to Revatinandana, who was famed as a very knowledgeable person. He knew the Bhagavad Gita and the Shastra quite well. Revatinanda Swami at that time. And he said, Revatinandana, you know what Prabhupada said? He just said that even if we go back to the spiritual world, we can still come back to the material world. And Revatinandana Prabhu said, no way. I know the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna emphatically says many times, never. Gatvanani vartante. In so many other verses, 5 or 6 or 7 verses, Krishna says, in no unclear terms, one never comes back to the material world, having reached the spiritual abode. The spiritual abode here is called Svasthamsthana, which literally means the devotee's own abode. It's not that it's Krishna's own, it's the devotee's own abode, his specific abode. It's customized for his specific mood of service, or her specific mood of service. And Nanda Kumar said, well, you can go and check with Prabhupada yourself. That's what he said. And Revatinandana went to Prabhupada. Prabhupada was resting after lunch, and he was like having a nap, and then he woke up, and Revatinandana Prabhu asked Prabhupada, can I ask you a question? Prabhupada said, yes. Did you say that when we go back to the spiritual world, we can still come back to the material world? Prabhupada said, yes. And then he said, but how does it work? Krishna says never. He didn't say it in a challenging way, but he nevertheless was bewildered. Yeah? And then Prabhupada, according to Revatinandana Prabhu, he was silent for a few seconds, and he gave that very pensive, meditative look somewhere off a distance with a smile. And then he came back to this plane, and he told, as if he was consulting with Krishna, whether he was seeking Krishna's permission to divulge that secret or not, or something like that. And he said, well, when Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita never, he means practically never. Practically never. Means you still have, and Prabhupada went on to explain, we still have that freedom of choice, but we don't misuse it any longer, having learned the hard way, having been separated from Krishna. And then, of course, Prabhupada says here, devotees choose the spiritual abode. Again, Prabhupada explains that the choice of a particular abode is the eternal choice of the devotee. It's not that one can pick and choose and then change his choice. It was a famous interaction with Upendra Prabhu, who said, Swamiji, if someone is in, say, friendly relationship with Krishna, but then he develops a liking to Madhuri Ras, can he change it? Prabhupada said, no. If you want to change it, that means you haven't understood it yet. Once you understand it, it will never change, because that's your original relationship with Krishna, which makes both you and Krishna happy. And if Krishna is fully happy with that relationship, why change? Why change? So Prabhupada explained it in very simple terms that Swarupa is eternal and eternally perfectly fitting the devotee's expectations and Krishna's expectations. It's only from the impartial standpoint that we can compare different Swarupas and tell and say that some of them are higher and some of them are lower. Once we have one of them, everything else becomes completely irrelevant. That doesn't happen only on the highest level of devotional service. Rupa Goswami explains that even on the level of Raganuga Bhakti, which is technically sadhana bhakti, the devotee becomes completely immune to arguments and logical expositions, trying to force him or her into a particular mood of service. He's already past that stage. So we'll finish the last paragraph of Prabhupada's purport to this verse. The word lingat, vinirgama, which are used here, mean after being freed from the two kinds of material bodies, subtle and gross. The subtle body, I just cannot help but remember the example that Krishna Kirtan Prabhu gave the other day in his class. Who remembers that example of being invited to a, what was that, a birthday party to your grandkids, and you have to drag a lazy dog with you who doesn't want to go anywhere, and then a bunch of helium balloons, right? And then it's a very funny scene that, and Krishna Kirtan compared it to the gross body and the subtle body. The subtle body is made of mind, intelligence, and false ego and contaminated consciousness, and the gross body is made of 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. When one is transferred to the spiritual world, he gives up both the subtle and gross bodies of the material world. He enters the spiritual sky in his pure spiritual body and is stationed in one of the spiritual planets. Interesting, the word stationed, usually it's, at least in English from what I understand, it's used to often to reference to the military, to the troops. Right? They're stationed, because I was born in a military family, my father was a military officer, so we were stationed in one place and we would transfer to another one. But here he's stationed for good, in that particular abode. Although the impersonalists also reach that spiritual sky after giving up the subtle and gross material bodies, they are not placed in the spiritual planets. As they desire, they are allowed to merge in the spiritual effulgence emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord. The word sva samsthanam is also very significant. As a living entity prepares himself, so he enters his abode. The impersonal Brahman effulgence is offered to the impersonalists, but those who want to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his transcendental form as Narayana in the Vaikuntha planets, or with Krishna and Krishna Loka, go to those abodes wherefrom they never return. So that's the end of the purport, and that's the end of our time also. And if you kindly allow, I would like to conclude with one very short, it's 2 line short statement by Srila Prabhupada. How do we stay on that transcendental realm, level of consciousness while being here in the material world? And when I came upon that statement by Srila Prabhupada, I felt it was something we can hold on to. He writes to Gargamuni in 1968, says, very important, just one sentence which encapsulates the secret of success in spiritual life. I am so pleased for your valuable, loving sentiments upon me, and this will keep you advanced in Krishna consciousness, rest assured. Prabhupada says, because you have these loving sentiments for me, and I'm very pleased with them, your loving sentiments and my pleasure with those sentiments will keep you always advanced in Krishna consciousness, rest assured. So we can take Prabhupada's assurance in its face value and continue reading Prabhupada's books and describing them in discussing them, in the wonderful association of devotees. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.